morning, everybody, and welcome to the St. Mark's Kids Chat. This week in Sunday school, you guys are going to be learning about the Good Samaritan, and it's a pretty popular Bible story. We've definitely read it a lot of times. It is from Luke chapter 10, verse 25 through 37. And basically, in that passage, it talks about how one day an expert in the law came up to Jesus and asked him, "How do I inherit eternal life?" Right? So what do you think, Sawyer? How do you inherit eternal life?
You have to believe in God.
Yeah, exactly. But Jesus replied asking him a question instead. He said to him, "Well, what does the law say?" And so the man read the law that said that you have to love your God with all of your heart, all of your soul, all of your strength, and all of your mind. And that you also have to love your neighbor as yourself, right? So the man asked Jesus, he says, "Well, who's my neighbor," right? So Jesus replied with a parable to answer his question, which a parable is basically a story about an illustration of a lesson. So let's come on down here, and we're going to kind of do the same. We're going to demonstrate our lesson of the Good Samaritan right now. Okay, so I have some water here, and then I also have an egg. This egg is going to represent a man who was attacked by robbers, okay? So I want you to pretend that the egg is the man who was attacked. And the man, he was attacked and he fell to the ground, okay? He fell down to the ground and they beat him and they left him almost for half dead, right? It's pretty sad. A little while later, guess what happened? Someone who was a priest came by and on the same path, but guess what happened? The priest did not stop. He just kept on going.
Didn't even look at him.
Didn't even look at him. All right, and then the next person, a little while later, someone named a Levite, which was also a religious person, came and was looked at him and saw the man laying on the ground, but then turned away and then kept on going. So I have a question for you guys. Would you guys expect that a priest or a Levite would stop and help somebody?
Yes.
Yeah, right? I mean, I would expect that any of our pastors, anybody like that would stop and help somebody, right?
Yeah.
So we don't understand why they didn't stop. That maybe they were afraid of the robbers, or maybe they thought that this guy in here was actually dead. And if they did think that he was dead, their religious customs did not allow them to touch anybody who was dead. So they thought that they would be unclean if they did so. So they were actually caring more about their religious rituals than this person and showing this person compassion, which is pretty sad. So that's one theory. So then, thankfully, a little while later, guess who comes by? A Samaritan man,
Yay!
right?
Yay!
So, but the Samaritans were actually people who didn't really get along with the Jews back then. Because they had different religious customs and things like that didn't really agree with the Jews. But nevertheless, even though he was a Samaritan, that Samaritan saw this man and he was filled with compassion and love and kindness for this man, okay? So what we're going to do, we're told that he saw him and he took pity on him. And he bandaged him. So we're going to pretend that the salt that's inside of this box, because this is a box of salt, that the salt represents compassion, love, and kindness that the Samaritan man poured out over this man right here who's injured, right? So if you can see that this egg, he's still down here, he's still hurt and injured, but he bandaged him, he poured oil and wine on him, he put him on his donkey, took him to an inn. He also paid an innkeeper to look after him, even when he had to leave. So he made sure that this man was taken care of, right? He made sure that he would have been, looked after and made sure that he was going to be okay. So what are you guys noticing as I'm pouring love and compassion and kindness and all these things on here? It's starting to float up. Exactly. Exactly. So isn't that interesting? So the egg is floating up, right? It is rising up. Can you see what happens when we pour love and compassion and kindness over somebody, right? What happens to them? They rise up, right? Like the man, he eventually healed and was okay. And it also, this is actually representative of what Jesus does for us too, right? So the Samaritan man was kind of like acting like Jesus in that way by pouring out love and kindness and compassion to us. So after that, after Jesus was done telling the story about the Good Samaritan, Jesus asked him, he said, do you think out of all three of these people, you know, the Samaritan, or the priest, the Levite, or the Samaritan, which one was showing neighborly love? Like, which one? Yes, the Samaritan, exactly. So, and you're right, and the expert in the law said the one who had mercy on him, right? So the Samaritan helped the stranger no matter what. So the answer to that man's question is who is our neighbor? It kind of goes back to what Jesus said, and our neighbor is everybody, right? And it doesn't matter who they are. Your neighbor isn't just somebody who lives next door. Your neighbor is someone who is a stranger. Your neighbor is anybody in this world, right? No matter what color their skin is, no matter what color their hair is, or anything like that. So Jesus wanted to make sure that they knew that when he said, love your neighbor as yourself, that he really meant everybody. So it doesn't matter what race or religion or anything like that we are called to show God's love to everybody. So I want you guys to remember that this week when you're out talking with people. So how can you be a good Samaritan to other people? Have a good day, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.